and welcome everyone, and welcome to Reverend Connie Habash. We're so glad you're here today. Connie is leading our meditation, and I'm going to spotlight you.
So let's go within to truly experience the remembering of who we truly are by letting our eyes close. As we close our eyes, feel your breath. And breathe deeply into the truth of who you are. That's beyond your thoughts. As you exhale, let yourself relax and soften. Breathing into the truth of who you are beyond your emotions. And releasing, softening as you exhale. And breathing in the truth of who you are beyond your body and your physical sensations. Relaxing with each exhalation so that you can soften and open to receive your divine essence. In the place of silence within. All the thoughts, all the circumstances of our lives have no effect on who we really are. We are that infinite presence. We are that infinite love. It is always here in the silence. Be with that for a few moments quietly. In every moment that we become present, we can know who we really are once again. As we drop into that inner place of quiet underneath all the thoughts and emotions and sensations, know that you are always that infinite presence. And as you feel ready, you can open your eyes.
I am remembering who I am. 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 I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am.
So Connie, we're so happy to have you here, and I'm looking forward to hearing about this topic, which I think is really important. So I'm going to spotlight you and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, David. Hi, everyone. Such a beautiful fall evening. And I'm glad to be back with you always. Like David said, you're like family. And so I'm talking today about something that I wrote about in a blog a couple of years ago. And actually, one of you here at Unity Spiritual Center of San Jose had emailed me and said, "You should talk about this sometime, Connie. I think it would make a great talk." And I thought, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And I bookmarked it and kind of set it aside in my awareness until the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 months. This healing the judgmental God within theme has kind of come back into my life as I've been noticing my perfectionistic tendencies reemerging, especially with spiritual practice. Anyone here like a recovering perfectionist besides me? Yeah, probably most of us. A lot of people in the spiritual path tend to be perfectionists. And so I was noticing it with a lot of things, like my spiritual practices, and with wanting to make sure that I did everything right and correct with other people and not wanting to disappoint them. And it all really has roots, not just in my own inner critic, but in how I perceive of the divine, of God in my life. I usually call God the divine. Because, I mean, there's no bigger inner critic than God, right? And so I was unconsciously, and sometimes even consciously, seeing the divine as judging me, evaluating me, comparing me, which is my habit to do for myself. But I was projecting it on something outside of me. And many of us struggle with the feeling that we don't live up to divine expectations of us on the spiritual path. Like, oh, I guess I didn't meditate enough this week, or I didn't meditate long enough, or I didn't meditate in the right way, or I didn't do my yoga practice. I haven't done my yoga for months, or oh, I'm not praying anymore. Or, I'm not praying with a sincere enough heart. I mean, we could go on and on and on about ways that we think we need to be perfect in what we're doing, and not just spiritually, obviously, in many things in our lives. So that source of the inner critic to me is my concept of the divine, of God. And it really starts with growing up, right, in our childhood, and what we developed as a result of maybe our family and the religion we might have grown up in, and culture and society that we were in. So what I grew up with, I'll share with you a little bit, because it does still influence me today, even though I don't like to think that it does. It does sometimes kind of come in. I grew up in a Presbyterian church, and we went to church every Sunday. And I remember the last time that I went to Sunday school was in 7th grade at, it was a junior high. Well, back then we called it junior high, now they call it middle school, Sunday school. And I remember the one passage from the Bible. It's kind of ironic. The one passage from the Bible that I would remember, because I didn't remember a whole lot of passages from the Bible, but the one that I remember was Matthew chapter 7, verse 1, which you can guess might be, "Judge not, lest ye shall be judged. Isn't that ironic that that's the one that sticks with me to this day and really stuck with me back then? And I looked around at the people in my junior high Sunday school group, and they're judging the heck out of everybody and everything, right? They're gossiping. They're talking badly about other people. They're talking badly about kids that go to other churches. And I thought, I don't want any part of this. So I stopped going there. But that passage, judge not lest ye shall be judged, has stayed with me my whole life. And really, in reflecting upon that, what was Jesus in the Bible there trying to tell us? Because I don't think he was saying, well, don't judge because God's going to judge you if you do. I think he was letting us know, if you're judging other people, you're going to be judging yourself too. And your own inner critic and your own inner judge is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. You're going to create that, right? When here at Unity, we talk about how we create by what we think and what we believe. And so if we're focusing on judging, whether it's someone else or ourselves, that's going to increase our experience of ourselves and of life through the lens of judging and comparing and evaluating. So I judged myself a lot growing up, and I wanted to get rid of parts of myself. And this kind of carried into my spiritual path. How many times maybe we've learned from some sort of spiritual path that you're supposed to get rid of your ego, which is not true. We need our egos to survive. But getting rid of parts of ourselves, or the part of myself that makes mistakes, or that I feel embarrassed by sometimes, or that you think, oh, I wasn't kind there. That I want to get rid of that part of myself. I don't like that part of myself. This is doing violence to ourselves. This is doing violence to ourselves. Self-judgment is painful, right? It's self-harming. We may not see this self-harming on the outside, but we feel it and we know it's happening on the inside. And I came to realize that God was not who was judging me. I was judging me. And I was projecting that idea on God. And I also projected it on spiritual teachers in my life too. I started to believe that they were judging me, that I wasn't living up to their expectations, that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't following their teachings well enough. And I also judge myself based on a persona that I think I need to have, because when I started seeing counseling clients, and I started seeing counseling clients in my 20s, when I started teaching, I thought I needed to live up to a persona of that counselor and teacher and all of that, and some idea of perfection. So I would judge myself a lot. In fact, to this day, I still remember what are, frankly, I know when I look at it objectively, very minor things that I did that weren't as effective as a yoga teacher. And I still remember those moments. I still work on letting go of my judgment of myself in that. Now, another interesting passage that I think is relevant to this, that I happen to remember from the Bible, and probably any of you who grew up in the Judeo-Christian tradition are familiar with this, from Genesis, talking about man or human beings being made in the image and likeness of God, in the image of God. And some people interpret this as that we look like God in appearance, and that we also, God has a personality like we do. And if you look at many of the mythological and spiritual tradition, ancient spiritual traditions from around the world, from Egypt and from Greece and Rome and the Nordic countries, a lot of their gods, right, were just kind of like big, powerful people that had all the jealousy and hatred and anger and revenge and lust and all of that, all of the traits that we struggle with as human beings, as a human race, they thought their gods had. And I think that what we end up doing is, first of all, we assume that we look like God, and we assume in some unconscious way that God might be a person like we are. But this is a limited view of the divine. We're putting our own limitations of what we think human beings are, and we're projecting that on the divine and thinking the divine is somehow related to some outpicturing here in this third dimensional world. And so what we end up doing is the reverse. We think that God is in the image and likeness of us as human beings. The divine is not limited by anything that we look like, by anything in physical form here, by any of our personality. What do we know the divine to be? Especially here as we teach at Unity, we know the divine to be infinite potentiality, unconditional love, infinite intelligence, the source of all life, in myriad expressions throughout the universe. And for us to remember that us being in the image and likeness of God is that an image is like a concept, right? It's not a concrete thing. It's a concept, it's an idea, it's a divine idea. So we're made as divine ideas of that infinite presence, of that infinite intelligence that has created everything. And it's fine if we want to have a picture, an image of God that we can relate to, because it's kind of hard to have a conversation, a real, like, let's get real with each other conversation with the divine that's like this just infinite light and intelligence, right? So we can have an image or a form of the divine that we relate to. In the yogic tradition, we would call this the Ishta Devata, or the form of the divine that is ours personally. But to not limit the divine to that's how we can relate to this unconditionally loving presence that really is beyond anything that we can imagine. So we end up then projecting our own issues with perfectionism, our own tendency to criticize and judge ourselves on the divine, thinking that God does that with us. But when I realized that, and have worked on this for decades, I recognized I had to stop creating God in that image of my mind as someone that was measuring and judging me and looking down on me with disappointment and shame every time I did something wrong or wasn't good enough. Now, I also realized that when I had to change this, and it's evolved over the years, I did this a lot in the 90s and then some in the 2000s, and now I'm revisiting it again because those of you who have been on the spiritual path for a long time, you know that we revisit issues again and again. We go, darn, didn't I finish this one? Wasn't I like done with this? Didn't I handle this issue? And then here it comes again, because we revisit it in a deeper level, because now there's something even more for us here that we can expand and open and transform even more with this particular core issue that might be journeying with us through this life. So we didn't do anything wrong. There might be that critic or that judge coming in like, I did something wrong, here it is again, I'm supposed to be over this by now. No, it's part of deepening our journey and unfolding even more. But I realized that when I had to give up or let go of or change this idea that God is like, you're not doing that right, I also had to give up the other end of that, which means that God is not giving me nice little gold stars for when I'm really good, right? So if we're letting go of a judging God, that means we need to let go of the idea and heal that idea that God's punishing us or judging us, and also saying, oh, good job, nice little girl, nice little boy, that little child inside of us that so much wants to please. That God's not doling out, the Santa list, right? Who's been good and who's been bad. That's such a limited idea of the divine, and it's not true. You see, because if we decided we want to keep that idea that God will be pleased with me, then if we don't get a sense that we've got the gold star for the day, we're going to feel like we did something wrong. We're going to throw ourselves into the other end of that polarity. So both ends of that polarity, I'm doing something good, I'm doing something bad. I'm good enough, I'm not good enough. I did something right, I did something wrong. Have to be let go of in terms of how the divine sees us. Because the divine is not a looking for being pleased or looking for when you displease that infinite presence. It is always, in all ways, unconditionally loving. It's the infinite source of everything that it is. And it's not limited by any of my ideas of what the divine is. And that if we can start to recognize and see the divine is this infinite presence, it's not judging, it's holding me with love, and start to see ourselves through Spirit's eyes, through that infinite intelligence and unconditional love, that each of us are a unique expression of that divine presence. We're in a unique outpicturing of that image in the mind of God. And that rather than being seen as good or bad or being judged in some way, the divine is seeing us through the eyes of joy, through the eyes of wonder at all the things that we can do, that we can explore, that we can express, that we've been given myriad potential expressions for our lives and for who we are here in this world. So then we can start to see our path rather as trying to get better, as trying to perfect ourselves, as trying to be good and not be bad, as unfolding, as constant unfolding. So like a flower that has infinite petals. You know, every time a flower starts to open, the petals start to open up, we see more and more of the flower, more and more of its radiant beauty. It just made me think of, I took a walk down the street today and there were these zinnias in these radiant, like bright, vibrant yellow and magenta and, rich, juicy orange, like an orange, the beautiful colors. And so imagining that we are infinitely unfolding flowers and that we have infinite petals always opening as more possibility. That's so much more joyful, so much more easeful than the idea of looking at ourselves as having faults and problems and things wrong with us and we need to be fixed. I need to fix myself. I need to get rid of something. I'm judging myself, right? So rather than looking at our spiritual growth and our spiritual path, rather than trying harder, always trying harder to be better, to be good, to do our spiritual practices right, to please somebody, we embrace ourselves with self-acceptance and feel that the divine is completely always accepting us. That's unconditional love. And that as we accept ourselves and we allow this continual unfolding, then we can allow new qualities to keep emerging as more petals open. So, okay, if I made a mistake or hurt someone's feelings, I can pause and be in compassion with myself and accept myself, and then allow, what can I allow now to unfold next? How can I allow a different way of speaking, a kinder way of behaving towards someone to unfold? There's no judgment, there's nothing wrong or nothing to get rid of. And so instead of trying to be perfect in our spiritual unfolding, again, feeling the divine, embracing us with compassion and opening our heart more. That, okay, we're going to make mistakes. And so can we open our heart more to receive that unconditional love of the divine that wants to pour into us? This is healing this idea of a judgmental God, is seeing them always accepting, always compassionate, always here for us, always loving. And of course, instead of fixing flaws, which is doing violence to ourselves, returning again to that self-acceptance and putting more attention on what can unfold. What are my gifts that I have to give? What are the blessings that flow through me? And also the blessings, looking at those places in us that we might feel are wounded, that are hurt, that act out of that wounded place in us, that there may be something that they have to offer. There may be something in those very painful places in us, in those places where we get really stuck, when we feel like we get stuck in anger, for example, and we don't like that. There may be some blessings in there. There may be some gifts in those very places in us that we judge the most, and we think that God judges the most in us. So we want to step out of the polarity that I mentioned of good enough, not good enough, good, bad. And instead of swinging back and forth between that, we embrace wholeness. Wholeness. That was in our unity statement today, right? Wholeness. Choosing wholeness, that our whole self, all of us, all of the parts of me, even the part of me that judges, are essential to my being, are worthy of love and acceptance and compassion, and have possible gifts, possible things to offer. Wholeness is an inherent principle of healing on all levels, of healing spiritually and emotionally and mentally and also physically. And wholeness is an essential principle of life. It's an important part of ecosystems on the planet. We need wholeness there. It's not just a couple things in the ecosystem that are essential. We need all of it. We need the fungi. We need the water. We need the times of sunshine and more dryness, and then we need rain. We need animals that keep in check the populations of the animals that are eating the plants so that the plants don't get devastated. We need the whole ecosystem. We need our whole self. There's a book called Healing with the Herbs of Life by Leslie Tierra. And in that book, Leslie Tierra says that herbs, used in healing, obviously, herbs are a complex, synergistic whole in which each of its chemical parts contributes to or buffers the other parts. In separating out and concentrating on one active principle from the rest, which is what a lot of pharmaceuticals do, they try and pull out, okay, this is the one part of this herb or this plant that does what we're wanting to do, like reducing inflammation, for example. But Leslie Tierra reminds us that in separating out and concentrating one active principle from the rest, this important balance is lost, that each plant and herb has all these different components to it to contribute to the healing and also buffer maybe things that would be too strong without that part in that herb to buffer it and make it more digestible or more assimilated into the body. Well, like herbs, so too are we humans complex. Were we to remove parts of ourselves that we didn't like or see value in, we'd lose our balance. We'd lose some parts of ourselves that might have those hidden gems that we can't see beyond our clouded, judgmental perception. So our fear, our anger, our insecurities, and even judgment itself can offer something to us. So like I said, don't judge the inner judge. Embrace it with self-compassion. This is very much like the Buddhist principle or practice of feeding the demons. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the Buddhist practice of feeding the demons. But in this feeding the demons, so the demons are like these very parts of ourselves that we want to reject, that we want to get rid of, that we think are terrible and awful and bad. What are those demons in us? So in feeding the demons, we embrace the painful and uncomfortable parts of ourselves with presence and caring, understanding and love. These are the parts of ourselves that need attention, not criticism, not rejection. Probably because these quote unquote demons became that way in us because of someone else's judgment and rejection of them, right? Maybe a family member, maybe a teacher, maybe a neighbor, maybe a minister or priest or a rabbi or somebody in the spiritual tradition that we grew up in. Maybe we felt judged by them, and so we rejected them, and then they festered. But as we hold those places within us with love and compassion, they begin to heal. And we begin to see maybe that was the joyful child within us that got squashed, that got devastated by that trauma or by that harmful word that our parent or teacher said to us. By feeding those demons, we find that they're not actually demons at all. We find out that they are parts of ourselves that want to come home, that want to be loved into wholeness, and that might have the lost joy or the lost creativity or the lost spontaneity or the lost intelligence within us. And so the Buddhists say that as we feed those demons, those aspects of ourselves that we previously might have feared or thought were bad or awful, they become our allies. They become our allies. They become our friends. They become precious, special qualities of ourselves, and we can welcome them home into wholeness. So I invite you to take a moment. You could close your eyes if you'd like. And in your heart, you may feel maybe some heaviness, maybe some pain or sorrow or anger or even hatred, something weighing on you in there. And God is not judging you for that. Maybe the inner critic in you, the divine is not looking down on you for those things. God wants to welcome you home into wholeness. And so can you start to open your heart and feed those parts of yourself? To allow the divine to pour into you, because maybe it's hard for you to do it with yourself, but to allow the divine to pour into you that unconditional love and that unconditional acceptance and that deep compassion, and to allow yourself to unfold like a flower, to start to let those petals uncurl and to receive that love, receive that infinite presence of the divine. To know that God is not a judging God, that this infinite presence wants to pour all this acceptance and appreciation and love into you. Allow yourself to be seen by the divine, to know that it's safe, because it totally loves all of you. Welcome yourself home into wholeness. And imagine that you are that flower blooming in that beautiful shower of both rain and divine light, filling you and healing you to free you from that judgmental self. Many blessings.
Thank you, Connie. Your talk I just had to comment real quickly before Marco sings that your talk brought me back when you talked about middle school, and I went to a Catholic school and then catechism or CCD or whatever they called it. And I just remember for the first, 12 years of my life, seeing biblical images of a judging God and pictures of hell and, all of the Old Testament references God as a judging God, because that's the way, the Bible was written in that historic context for that reason. And it was translated and retranslated and mistranslated. And then you look at later on, the biblical language is all about love when you talk about those passages of Matthew and things like that. And it's a progression. God progressed in the Bible from a judging, angry, smite you kind of a God to this way and this love and this unconditional force. And so the Bible evolved. And I also think about that, whatever that was, those pictures joined together with whatever voices raised us. For most of us, it was like traditional dysfunctional parents, and how we have to take all those voices together. And I think that's one of the reasons why Unity is here, is to, we parent ourselves and we relearn our definition of all these judgmental voices. So thank you for opening up this topic. I think it's a great discussion topic too. Margot, I'm going to spotlight you. There's a Ricky Byers Beckwith song, which I think is beautiful.
Pour yourself in me, pour yourself into my heart. Oh, wonderful Spirit, pour yourself in me, pour yourself into my heart. Oh, wonderful Spirit, pour your joy in me, pour your joy into my heart. Oh, wonderful Spirit, pour your joy in me, pour your joy into my heart. Oh, wonderful Spirit, pour your love in me, pour your love into my heart. Oh, wonderful Spirit, pour your love in me, pour your love into my heart. Oh, wonderful Spirit, pour yourself in me, pour yourself into my heart. Oh, wonderful Spirit, pour your joy in me, pour your joy into my heart.